It's about connecting people and resources around professional learning in a way that we can all take advantage of. It's an ambitious project because in a way we wanted to be mindful about the quality of the information. So we allow centers to participate, but they have to designate a person who's going to be entering the information.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
Julio Rodríguez joins us to discuss AMPLIFY, a resource aggregator of professional learning experiences for world language education.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. Can you hear the waves?
No.
Neither can I, but our guest today can.
Julio Rodríguez is the director of the Language Flagship Technology Innovation Center, the director of the Center for Language and Technology, and the director of the National Foreign Language Resource Center, all at the University of Hawaii in Manoa. I'm exhausted just reading all of this.
The Technology Innovation Center just launched a resource aggregator of professional learning experiences for world language education called AMPLIFY, and we are excited to hear all about it.
Welcome to Speaking of Language, Julio.
Thank you. Super happy to be here.
Before we hear more about this new exciting AMPLIFY resource, please tell us a little bit about your background, the research that you do, the work that you do, your path with languages.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I've always been somehow connected to languages since I started off, with my BA, which is not really a BA. In Argentina, it's more like a graduate degree in translation. Mm-hmm. That was my first incursion into language education. And then my original idea was I was going to become an interpreter, and I did that for about a year or two almost. Mm-hmm. But it didn't quite work out for me. I didn't like that area as much. So teaching became something that appealed to me. So I ended up teaching, and I loved it. And then I had half a life in Argentina working in language education, and my other half life has been in the U.S. So I first came to the U.S. On an exchange program that was amazing, helping with Spanish. And then after that, I became interested in second language acquisition and technology. And at that point, Iowa State University was the only one that had a web page back in 93, 94. So it was actually Gopher. Remember Gopher?
Oh boy, yeah.
So they had a Gopher page. And so I thought, okay, so this is probably the place to be. And I decided after I did a BA in Whitman College in German, that was my BA. I did an MA in applied linguistics at Iowa State. And then I became interested in instructional design. And my PhD is in instructional design and language teacher education. Teacher education was the emphasis of the program in Iowa. And I love that emphasis. And at that point, there was not much in, synergies between teacher education and applied linguistics. So I thought that was a perfect niche for me.
Yeah.
Great. Well, our listeners want to know about AMPLIFY, or at least we've promised them they'd learn about it. So can you tell us, what is it and how did it come about?
All right. I guess I'll start with the latter, how it came about.
Sure.
So I give you a little bit of the context. So the Language Flagship Technology Innovation Center is the sponsor of this project. And it started in 2015. And a big emphasis of the center has been to try to get new ideas and innovation into language education. And we try to work with at least three sectors, very broadly defined. One of them is the government. we work with colleagues in the government. The project is sponsored by the government, by the Department of Defense. We try to work with the private sector as well. So we have some collaborations with private companies and some projects that apply to that, like the Launchpad that we held at ACTFL last year. And we also do a lot of work with academia, of course. So that's where our colleagues come into play. And we try to collaborate across institutions beyond flagship, trying to discover needs and innovations that might help language education. So one of the things that we have been doing since the center started has been to bring in together colleagues from different professions, from different fields that sometimes intersect with language education. So we have had gatherings where we have had representation from academia, the government, and businesses. And when we talk about academia, it's very broad because we sometimes bring in people from, for example, human language technologies, or from computer science, computational linguistics, everything that intersects with language education and that has some bearings with technology. So Amplify was born at one of these gatherings. This last gathering was last year, 2019. It feels much longer than a year. For some reason, it feels like it's been eons ago. It's just, but this was almost a little bit over a year, and Angelica was one of our participants, so we're happy to have her there. And one of the things that I always wanted to do was to get language center directors together in a way that we could collaborate and bring in also students and faculty to the mix. So this was a wonderful opportunity to try to do that. So the flagship works with 24 institutions of higher education. And at this gathering, we tried to bring in the language center directors that work at those institutions, but we also opened it up to any other language center director that was interested. And we had a wonderful response, and we had a lot of people come to the event. So at the event itself, the event was a little bit, let's say, blended because they had a little bit of homework to do before coming to the event. We asked people to tell us make a little poster in Padlet and tell us what projects they were working on. And then at the event itself, we did a little bit of cross-pollination. We asked people to take a look at the projects that everybody was working on. And that was the inspiration to create groups at the event around projects that were of interest to everybody there. One of those groups was called originally PD Lang, a PD for professional development. So that PD Lang group came up with this idea of having some sort of way to share professional development with directors of different centers. And after the event, we followed up and we kept working on, getting people together, getting people to talk about defining a little bit the idea a little bit more. And out of the 5 groups that were created at this event, 2 kept going. And that was part of our expectation. We didn't think that everybody was going to be following up. And some of the projects were really pie in the sky sort of projects, like XR and things that are a little bit more complex than the kind of technology we're looking at. So Amplify was one of those perfect projects because it was relatively easy to implement in terms of technology. It's more brains than technology that need to be involved in this. And it was a way to actually do something that people seem to be interested in. So the goal of Amplify is to have an index of professional development experiences, we call them, that every center can enter into the system. And that way, there are a couple of things or affordances that come out of having this repository of professional learning opportunities. So one of them is that as a language center director myself, I learn what other centers are doing in a very focused way. I don't have to go to everybody's web pages or see, sometimes we don't have the chance to update our web pages as often as we probably should. And sometimes, the information is kind of scattered in social media or things like that. So having this sort of hub where I could, for example, as a tech center director, see what other colleagues are doing, we thought this was, a wonderful. And by the way, all these ideas were shaped and refined by the group. I'm just expressing what was produced, right? It's not my brainchild. It's the brainchild of the whole group.
Yeah.
So the other thing that is, I think, another affordance that Amplify has is that you are able to, as people put more and more resources in the system, we are building a taxonomy of what those resources are about. There are different ways to go about that. We do have some sort of data model that we came up with the group, but it's very open and very flexible. So things are being connected and linked in ways that the group thinks is meaningful. So the system allows you to do that, create your own tags, and it has a little bit of curation on our side to, make things coherent. And as time goes by, I'm guessing things are going to start collapsing into terms that we all refer to.
Yeah.
The other affordance that this has is that because you enter a professional learning experience into the system, when you do that, you enter a lot of metadata about that professional development experience. And one of those things is who is the expert doing this professional learning experience. So what that allows us to do is to create profiles of folks who present on certain topics. And as the system grows, you can see that there are people who are being invited by different centers to do talks about particular things.
Yeah.
And that allows us to identify people who are knowledgeable in an area, who we can bring to our center to do maybe the same thing or something different, but within the topic that they have been associated with in the system. So this, I think lately I have found this super useful, especially because I don't have, for example, expertise in social justice. It's something that is coming up over and over.
Sure.
And one of the things that I saw is, for example, that the University of Wisconsin at Madison is doing a great series on social justice with people that I had never known about. So this is really where the potential of this is, I think.
Yeah.
It's about connecting people and resources around professional learning in a way that we can all take advantage of. It's an ambitious project because in a way it does. We wanted to create be mindful about the quality of the information. So we allow centers to participate, but they have to designate a person who's going to be entering the information. And as the system grows, we discover new things and new needs. For example, in the last, after the first pilot, we realized that it may be a little bit odd for people to see themselves in this system if we haven't told them that this information is going to be shared through Amplify.
Sure, yeah.
So now we have a way, we have some information there, and the expectation from centers to, have a media release sign that also includes Amplify as one of the places where things are going to be posted. And so far, I think it's been well received, and I look forward to seeing how this grows.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will. It's there are so many technology projects that start with a push, but then kind of get either sidetracked or sort of not maintained as well. So the advantage of this one, of Amplify, is that maintenance is very, very low. So we built something that we think, even if there is no sponsor funding, we will be able to maintain and keep as a resource.
Yeah. So when you say that this is basically for language centers, does that only include the Title VI centers, or is that also broader thinking, kind of like Pathways was, where you also extended it beyond just the Title VI ones?
It's the latter. So it's a very, very broad interpretation of center.
Okay.
And we are aware that sometimes institutions may not have a language center per se, but they may have a person at the library, for example,
Sure.
who works on language education and specializes in professional development, or is the contact person to bring professional development to the university for language educators. That person would be the contact person that would enter information in the system if they create something at their institution.
Sure.
Because that's the actual thing too. It's the resources we have in Amplify are resources that the institutions that are entering the resource are the sponsors of that event, or the creators of those materials.
So that actually brings me to the next question. Exactly what are people contributing, or what do you hope that people are contributing? Because I'm thinking, you've talked about all these wonderful professional development experiences. Would this be a place where I can see what's coming up in terms of speaker series, or is this usually after the fact, after something tangible exists?
It's actually both.
Okay.
When you go to the website, what you see is, if there is something coming up, that's what is highlighted in chronological order. So the first thing that is coming up after, when you open the website, is what is highlighted. If there is nothing coming up, you still have a record of everything that was done, or that was actually entered right into the system. What we have noticed is that there is a couple of different types of experiences, and this is also part of how you define things. So we allow the system to create series of experiences, because sometimes there is, for example, like I was mentioning, social justice can be the topic of 4 or 5 different webinars, right? So there is a way for whoever enters the information to link those, so that it's not just the particular webinar, but all 4 of them are linked together. So we see some of those that are like the sort of more like isolated experiences, right? Like for example, we have one, I think, that is on accessibility on a particular topic. So that's also an option. And we also have some that are very technical, like our center is now working a little bit more with faculty who are interested in natural language processing, and Python is one of those tools that are very much developed for that. So we had a couple of workshops on Python, and so that's very different from all the other things that you can see there. When you enter a professional learning or professional development event or experience, it's not just the information about what it was about, but also any resources that get created after the event can be also entered into the system. So, for example, if there were handouts or if there was a recording of the event, all those resources can be added to the event later on. So in some cases, you're gonna be able to see the actual webinar or the actual resource, and in some cases, you're gonna be able to download, the materials that were used for it. So that's some of, and we expect those materials to be open, right?
Sure.
To be open for people to reuse them.
And you mentioned that the plan would be that this is not just speaker series and webinars, but also all sorts of other materials, possibly research reports or curricular materials, just anything that people are willing to share.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, materials are, I think the only constraint is focusing on professional development for world language education, which is extremely broad, right?
Yep.
But as long as you are within the confines of that broad description, you're good.
Yeah, wonderful. Can users view all the opportunities and experiences that are there without having author access as well? Or do you have to be a contributor in order to see what's going on?
No, you don't need to be a contributor. It's an open website. So if you go to the Tech Center website, there's a link there, and there's also there will be a direct website once we figure out what the URL is going to be. Amplify
Okay.
is a rather new thing, so it's it's open, so anybody can go and see. Lurking aloud. So the lead for the project is Dr. Richard Medina, and he is a new faculty member in the Language Flagship Technology Innovation Center. So he's in charge. He has a degree in computer science and an interest in language education. So he's the lead of this project, and he's the one who can answer technical questions and eventually the one that you will be talking to if you request an account.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, I think this will be very beneficial for us here because I know that we've talked about, what are other centers doing right now? What's going on in the general field? What are people interested in terms of professional development? So having this one-stop shopping, this one aggregator, I think is really fantastic. And it's really wonderful that this came out of Pathways and that your center is sponsoring that. So thank you very much for this beautiful contribution.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned you have listeners from all over. So this is also open beyond the U.S. So we're not, just trying to do local things because the idea is to share resources and expertise, and we're so separate yet very together because of Zoom and other technologies that I can recall another time in my life where I've been so much connected with people through technology, partly because of the need, right? But hopefully this is also going to be a silver lining. And allowing us to get more and more resources into the system.
No, absolutely. And sharing is caring, right? I mean, I really like the push toward open educational resources.
Yes. Any other updates you'd like to share from your many roles?
We're actually holding a hackathon. We just held a hackathon, which was amazing. That was a truly inspiring event with students online. And that was over a 4-day period. And I was so concerned because I thought, oh my gosh, what's going to keep them coming back and doing this thing in 4 days? Who is going to show up the last day? Well, everybody showed up.
That's awesome.
And they did this wonderful display of ideas of the kind of tools that they would like to have as language learners. So that I thought it was super inspiring. And even though there was one winner, all the ideas, we had 6 groups that came up with technology solutions for language learning problems. And some of them were, the winner was actually, one of the features was making listening more difficult, which is something,
nice.
Which is something that we wouldn't think about. But they gamified the product they came up with, and they wanted to challenge themselves. So basically, you listen, and when you listen, you can actually put it in challenging mode, or I can remember what the mode was. So leave it up to students to come up with things that are, as language teachers, we go the other way, trying to make things
That's
easier,
awesome.
right?
And this was also part of the Tech Center, right?
That's another event that the Tech Center sponsors. It's a hackathon. We call it Hack the Flagship, which is basically for students to come up with ideas to hack their learning through technology tools they imagine, right? And some of these are very simple. They're just a question of enabling them and making them available to them.
Yeah.
So they could be, like pathways, we don't expect all the projects to come to fruition, but some of them will. Coming down the pipeline, we are going to sponsor a Launchpad, which is the same sort of activity we had at Actful, but this time it's outside Actful because Actful is so much condensed this year.
Yeah.
So we're holding the Launchpad as a Tech Center event, and we have 5 wonderful startup companies that probably nobody has heard of, and that's the reason why they are in the Launchpad. And if you're not familiar with that particular event, basically it's a little bit like a Shark Tank with no investment behind it, only really professional and positive feedback. So these new companies that are creating language products for the world language education field have an opportunity to present their products to a group of judges, and then there is a winner selected from that competition. So it's a really interesting event. I think it's taken us through a very interesting path, which is working with companies and understanding their constraints and the issues they face, which sometimes, in academia we don't quite understand, right? But it's a great opportunity for discovery, for people to discover new things and new ways to do technology and language.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating aspect. I mean, I really like everything that comes out of the Language Flagship Technology Innovation Center.
Well,
the stuff
you.
that you guys do is truly innovative. And I also particularly appreciate that it doesn't only focus on the educator, but that there's so many projects and programs that really ask learners for their input too. I do think we sometimes forget that they are an important stakeholder with their own thoughts and ideas of what should happen in the language classroom.
Absolutely, yeah. That has been an inspiration since we started, which the conceptual framework was design thinking, and an important concept within design thinking is bringing in all the stakeholders to the table and understanding, being a day in the life of, so you understand how things work, and that's usually difficult to do. But when you get people together and talking together, we think that will result in some of the things that we hope will be assets, in the products that get created. One of them is sustainability, which is so much needed. You know, as well as I know, how many things get created in academia that lack the support afterwards because the systems are too complex, or the person who designed them retired, or so that doesn't happen in the private sector as much because they have the need to survive.
Sure.
And if you don't, work with your customers, you're dead. So we need to learn about that too, how that, can be something that is an asset for the way we do things in technology and language education.
Yeah,
so that's one of the goals.
Wonderful. Well, Julio, before we sign off, we'd like to ask you to share your favorite word in a language that you speak, that you love, that you are learning, that you have learned. What is that favorite word?
You told me about that and it made me think so much because I don't have a particular word. I feel bad being partial. But there is, because of my background as translator, there is a category of words that I love, which is those that are almost impossible to translate from one language to the other without having to go and read and listen and encounter the word in 1,000 different contexts so that you get a little sense of what it means in that language. And then whenever people say, what does this mean? I say, well, it depends. Tell me where you I love those words because it's, and in my particular case, it's I'm a bit biased because my first love was German. So Gemütlichkeit is my favorite word because I've seen it translated into English and Spanish in different ways and into French, and they never are the same. And they always translate it in ways that I think I would have never thought about that, but yeah. So
Nice.
Gemütlichkeit, and all the colleagues of those words.
And we ask our listeners to just look up all the different meanings of it now. So we're not even going to tell you what it is.
That's me included, the one non-German speaker among us.
Included, Sam. I like it.
Well, thanks so much for speaking of language with us, Julio.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here, and it's always a pleasure to talk to Angelica. We've known each other for a long time, and I always appreciate her views and how fresh her thoughts are always. So
Next week, you'll hear from Christopher Romalik.
Dr. Romalik is professor of Spanish and coordinator of Spanish and French at Onondaga Community College in Syracuse.
He will give a talk as part of our monthly LRC speaker series tomorrow on universal design for learning and the implications for language educators.
The video of his talk will be posted on our website at lrc.cornell.edu. And, of course, you can listen to next week's episode online. Until then,
Auf Wiederhören!
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu or look for Cornell LRC on Facebook and Twitter.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.